Hey guys, Dustin Wint.
Hey, this is Scott Snyder.
This is Paul Dini.
And you're listening to Bat Force Radio.
And you're listening to Bat Force Radio.
You're listening to Bat Force Radio.
This is Kevin Conroy, the voice of Batman, and you're listening to Bat Force Radio, so stay tuned.
Welcome back to Bat Force Radio, first episode of 2024. Thank you for joining us for another year. We're going to have a lot of cool shit this year again. Starting today, I always like to start every new year with an episode featuring someone that I really wanted to have on and is doing something really cool. And today we have first guest of the year is an illustrator and author of books like West of Sundown, Infidel, Green Hornet, The Shadow, Nightmare Country, and notably today, the previous volume of John Constantine Hellblazer from 2019-2020 with Si Spurrier. This week, he and Si return to the character with John Constantine Hellblazer, Dead in America, #1. Welcome to the show, Mr. Aaron Campbell.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Thank you, Aaron. Thank you. I appreciate you taking the time. Launch week of a new title. I don't know. Is it still anxiety time for you at all? Do you get nervous, or you old hat enough at it now?
Yeah, I mean, because I've been working on the book for, well, probably 6 months now. So I've been hotly anticipating the day that it finally releases. But I just wrapped up issue 4, and that was a really crazy deadline for me. So I'm not even thinking right now about anything. I'm just decompressing from finally wrapping up that issue. Think Tuesday, when Tuesday hits, or Wednesday, whenever people start picking the issue up and we start seeing reviews come out, that's when I'm going to be glued to my phone, like checking Comic Book Roundup to see what people are saying.
Well, I think you're gonna have pretty good results. I got to read this one early December, and yeah, it's a great result. That's why I wanted to make sure that I got to talk to you when the time came. First of all, before we get too far into it, how are things going on your end?
Oh, they're going pretty good. Like I said, I just wrapped up issue 4, which was I don't know what it was about that particular issue, but always around the holidays, things get really backed up. And then I start to scramble to try to get caught up. And so I end up just the holidays just go by in a flash because I'm on crazy deadline every year. And it's like sun up to sundown. All I'm doing is sitting and drawing. And like the only days I actually get to like let go are Christmas Day and New Year's Day. Like those are the 2 days where I'm like, I don't care if I'm late. I'm not working these days. So, but like I said, I just wrapped that up, I think a little bit over a week ago, and I'm working on what's next coming up, which are several exciting things with the series. So I'm working on one of those, wrapping something up this weekend, which I don't really know. I mean, I kind of intimated it on Blue Sky, but that's kind of a niche social media place where news doesn't really travel. So I'm not really sure if I can broadly say what it is I'm doing concerning issue 5 of Hellblazer, but it's going to be pretty exciting.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I can definitely see any issue that you're working on being possibly a crunch as far as the deadline goes. You don't do a simplistic kind of style. You don't kind of do characters in the foreground, but kind of a blank background. Everything is pretty well. I've got some images right here from issue 1. So this picture here, this is a full page from issue 1. That by the time people are hearing this, the book is on shelves. So we won't worry too much about it. But from December when I got the PDF, this has been my phone background.
Oh, nice.
Because all the pages in this book just look so good. But yeah, like that's obviously not something you're just banging out. You're not just smashing pages like this out and moving on to the next one. That's
because I shoot lots of photo reference, and I work with models. I have a dedicated model for John. I have a dedicated model for Daniel or Dream, Nat, Noah, everybody basically. I pepper myself in there whenever I feel like it. Like you'll see me as the conquistador, the possessed kitschy conquistador statue in issue 1.
Okay. And, sitting in the museum or whatever it was there.
Yeah, and I can't remember who else I used myself. Oh, I think in issue 3, I portray a one of these kind of patriot border guard guys in Texas. I always try to change it up just enough so that I don't look identical across pages. But like the first time I usually throw myself into a book, I just let it be me. And then I kind of go off in sort of like the Mitch Gerads or, like Sean Phillips kind of vein where I change it up just a little bit. You can probably catch glimmers of myself in it, just like, you can usually catch glimmers of, Sean Phillips and his main characters. Because I know he uses himself for reference a lot. And same thing with Mitch, Mr. Miracle. I mean, that was Mitch.
Yeah, for sure.
So
now, this is way off topic. This just popped into my head. I wasn't even planning to bring this up, but since we've got you and we're talking about Constantine, a few years back, I read this article. I wonder how quickly I could find it. Forget it. But anyway, the gist of the article was it was speaking to like Alan Moore and then like a bunch of other people who had worked on Constantine at some point over the years, and how there was this common thread among them that they all would swear to some degree or another that at some point out in the real world they have encountered John Constantine somewhere.
Yeah, it only
when I read that.
It only happens to writers. No artist has ever seen John. Alan Moore was the first one to say that he swears that he saw him in a bar in London. There's only been a couple more. I think Jamie Delano has seen him. And I think Garth. I hang out with Garth at New York. I don't know if I've ever asked him. Garth is a pretty no-nonsense guy. If there's anybody, maybe it was Peter Milligan. It's not actually that many who've seen him. It's a handful. It's definitely less than 6, from what I understand.
Funny thing that after I read the article, I reached out to a couple people. I shot Liber Mayo a message and cited this article and asked him. And I don't know if he's written John at some point. Maybe he's done some writing in something that he's illustrated too. But he said that he had seen him at some point, and also Sean Murphy had said that he had seen him once.
Okay. Well, then that flips that, because Si had told me that it was only authors who'd ever seen him.
Well, maybe that Sean and Lee are both also authors. Maybe they've done some writing and they qualify for the club. I don't know, but you do as well.
Written any Hellblazer? Yeah. I mean, I'll cross fingers because this will be a little bit of a spoiler, and since I've already shown this on Blue Sky, it's probably not a big deal. But I am writing some Hellblazer for issue 5. So that puts me into the author category. So maybe I'll see him next time I'm in London
and ask him to model for you.
Yeah, I mean, I know the story from Alan Moore was that he saw him in a bar. He was in the back. He had his trench coat on. This was back in the day when you could smoke inside, and he was back there by himself, lighting up a cigarette and just smoking. And then he got up and he left. And Alan Moore is 100% convinced that it was John.
Yeah, if I had planned to bring this up, I would have gone back through some messages to find out. Like, I think that Lee said I feel like Lee might have said it was in London that he saw him too. And
It's
yeah,
usually I think,
yeah, it's an interesting thread among these creators.
yeah, that's a fun one. John has, that's one of the things I love so much about Constantine is that it has its own mythology that exists outside the comic itself.
Yeah, for sure. And I'd noticed just there that you said Constantine.
Yeah.
That's a funny thing because there's the difference in pronunciation. Neil Gaiman will tell you it's Constantine. I believe Alan Moore will tell you it's Constantine.
Yeah.
But I've always said Constantine. My justification is that I also don't say aluminium.
Oh, well,
So,
this isn't just, hoity-toity Brits, telling people the correct way to pronounce his name. It's canon. It's in the books. I think it was in Garth Ennis's run, and he basically put a button on it, and somebody calls him Constantine. I think it's even written out in the dialogue where somebody says Constantine, and it's spelled T-E-E-N.
yeah.
And John says, it's Constantine, like constant wine or something like that.
Calling us right out. Well,
Yeah.
I'm Canadian. You're lucky. You're lucky I don't throw an A in the middle of it.
That
there.
was my that was what the first time I ever met Si in person, or we spoke at least. That's what basically cemented my Hellblazer cred. Was the first time I ever said it in front of him. I said Constantine. He was like, "You said that right."
You got it. Rare for an American
I've never met who says his name right.
So this project overall, Dead in America. So back at, it was Fan Expo in Toronto 2 years ago when your issue of Nightmare Country, where you had recreated the serial convention from Neil Gaiman's Sandman.
2 years? Jesus Christ.
That's crazy. Maybe strictly speaking, it's like a year and a half or something.
Yeah.
But at that point, we were talking about your issue coming out, and at that point, you had mentioned that you guys were trying to get another Hellblazer book greenlit, and then jump to now, we're finally getting it. Was it in doubt, or did you guys know for a while that this is said it's going to go through?
I mean, until something happens, there's always some doubt, but it was always the intention, ever since, and we like to say that the first series was never canceled. It just wasn't re-upped. Like, we didn't get our second 12-issue arc, because 12 issues was all we were ever like guaranteed to begin with. So we like to, make that very clear. We weren't actually canceled.
And I like it this way, the way things are coming out and particularly for the Sandman universe, because James has Nightmare Country is still going, but it's now in the Glass House, which started again at another #1. So it's kind of fitting for that Sandman universe stuff for things to come out in blocks.
Yeah, and it's much more, even for me, I think that especially for like more mature titles, the days of long ongoing series just don't make a whole lot of sense anymore. It's much more consumable if there's a beginning, a middle, and an end to a specific storyline, and you can package that as the same way that you would an OGN or a novel, for that matter. And it makes it much easier to onboard. As far as I'm concerned, I think it makes it much more easy to onboard new readers, because there's always that question is like, well, where do I start? It's like, we'll just pick up, Marks of Woe or whatever, and like, just you can do the first two trades and you're good to go. And even with this one, people have been asking me like, do I need to read that stuff before? And I'm like, well, I mean, sure, it would be helpful, but we do give a little bit of a recap, at the very beginning of issue 1. And what happened in the first arc really there's only the inciting incident is directly connected to our original run. So beyond that, which is explained, you actually don't need to read the first 2 trades, though I will say, please go read them and buy them. I get royalties out of that.
Yeah,
But
it definitely helps to have the context. And
yeah,
as far as doing things in smaller blocks like that, as someone who works in a comic shop, I could maybe 2 weeks ago, I sold a packaged set of all of the first issues
nice.
of the first set of it to someone who was planning to start reading this one when it came on and wanted to catch up. And it's just so much easier than, oh yeah, I want to start reading Batman. Okay, well, you can jump right on now at issue 137 or
yeah. I always thought, this is completely off the subject, and you'll have to remind me what the original question was, because I think we got off track. But I've always thought, what I would love to walk into a comic shop and see an area of the shop where you have, you have your wall of trades, but there's, several bookcases dedicated, and it's called Essentials. And you have new readers come into the shop, and they're like, well, where do I start? What do I do? And then the person working there is like, oh, well, come with me. These are the essentials. You can pick anything off of this shelf and you're good to go. Like, these are the essential Batmans. These are the essential X-Men. These are the essential, you got Saga of Swamp Thing. You've got if you can start anywhere, you can pick anything off of this shelf, and it will get you where it'll get you where you want to go. It'll introduce you to the characters. It's seminal stories, but it's always mixed together. And you go into most comic shops and new readers are just lost. It's overwhelming. So I tell this to every retailer I ever meet. You need an essentials section.
Yeah, it's definitely a handy way of helping people get on. And I saw a thing, I forget what shop it was. I saw a shop recently promoting a sale specifically on trade paperbacks, where any volume 1 that they picked up, then they could get volume 2. Volume 2 would be 20% off. Volume 3 would be 30% off, and volume 4 40% off, so on and so on.
They're kind of doing a reverse of what Image does, where volume 1 is sold for $10, and then volume 2 jumps up to 20 to get you into it. Kind of giving people a reason, because what their explanation started off with was, so many people they read the first volume of something and they talk about how much they loved it, but then they haven't read 2 through 8. Yeah.
So urging people to continue along.
So anyway, I think we got off track. I can't remember what the original question was that you had asked.
I don't either, so don't worry about it. But so one of the interesting things, this is a great time for anything coming now. Obviously, Sandman is right in this, so it's a great time for anything Sandman universe, but definitely having Sandman in. We've got, like I said, James doing his stuff with Corinthian. Pornsack just did his Dead Boy Detectives. We've got Sandman on Netflix. We've got Dead Boy Detectives coming on Netflix. How great would it be to get a Constantine series on Netflix, like within that same universe?
I mean, this is the big other dream that someone takes notice of what Si and I have done and says we should translate this to the big screen or the small screen.
Honestly, I would prefer the small screen. Just you get to tell much longer stories there.
Absolutely, like it would need to be a series in order to tell it properly. I do think that John does deserve his own film, though, and a film that is like actually John, and not love to Keanu Reeves, but it's not, that's not John Constantine. It's a guy
exactly.
named John Constantine, but it's a different person.
Yeah, he doesn't look like him. He doesn't sound like him. And yeah, that's what I was just about to get to myself. Like, no ill will toward my countrymen. You know, I like Keanu, and he can basically be in anything he wants.
Yeah.
But he doesn't look like the man. He doesn't sound like the man. It's for the better that he doesn't. I don't know if you've heard him do accents before, but it's not his thing. So it's for the best that he just sounds like him.
I watch Bram Stoker's Dracula every year, so I'm quite acquainted with his his accent work.
Well, there was a movie he did, I think it was late 80s, a hockey movie where he played a French Canadian guy, and man, he's Canadian, and his French Canadian accent was terrible.
Oh man. Yeah.
But yeah, funny. I would love to see, maybe this is asking too much, but I would love to see Matt Ryan back.
Yeah, I like Matt Ryan a lot. But just that the way that Hollywood works, anything that would connect it directly into the Sandman universe, Matt unfortunately wouldn't get the role. I'm not going to say he absolutely wouldn't, but I would say that it would be a big uphill climb to make that happen, because I mean, one of the things that they were very conscientious about with Sandman was completely disconnecting it from the WB, Lucifer series, Constantine series, Legends of Tomorrow, all of that stuff. Because I mean, technically, Lucifer first appeared in Sandman, if I'm not mistaken. So that character is from Sandman, but it is absolutely not. Neil Gaiman has said that character is a completely different character from the character in Sandman. And that's why in the Sandman series on Netflix, Lucifer is portrayed by someone completely different. And in a way, it's completely unique from that other show.
Yeah, and even if it was, you could even act like it was the same one, but they're at two different points in their existence.
Yeah, and
one has Lucifer having lived on Earth as a cop or something.
Yeah. If they were ever to, this is just me speculating or thinking out loud. If they were ever to do any kind of adaptation that involved like the work that Si and I at least do, which I think that would probably be at the bottom of the heap in terms of what stories they choose to tell. Our John is old. I mean, he's technically in his early 60s, even though he looks pretty good for being a man in his early 60s. But he had this whole gap of time because our John is connected directly to Books of Magic. So everything that happened after Books of Magic, which was 1992, I think, is when that came out. The John that exists after that is like, that's all a gap in this John's life, because he basically started from, our John starts 30 years into the future from Books of Magic. So there's that whole gap in his life that is missing, that this John doesn't remember. So that was a way to de-age him some. So I guess technically he's probably like in his 50s or something. But yeah, so for me, like, I have other ideas of who I think would be like good, fun Johns or actors to portray John.
I feel like at some point if something I had been suspicious of were true, I feel like you would have maybe alluded to it. But if you remember a while back, they were talking about a Constantine, I think, series, and at least the word that was out was that they were actively seeking a person of color to play the character. And what I was curious about that was, were they going to do a series where it was Noah?
Oh, I've never heard anything about this. This is complete news to me. I would love to see Noah, like, because I mean, Noah still doesn't know that John is his dad.
Yeah.
Slowly, Noah is starting to come in his own through, Dead in America. John, as the issues go forward, he's becoming more and more. He's teetering on the verge of revealing like who he really is and why he's so invested in this kid's life. And of course, Swamp Thing has a lot to do with that because Swamp Thing was always the character. It all started off with John helping Swamp Thing to come to a deeper understanding of what he really is and what he's really capable of. And even though John was a bastard in the way that he did this, it really did lead Swamp Thing to his basically apotheosis, because Swamp Thing is a god level character.
Yeah.
If it wasn't for John in Saga of Swamp Thing and during Crisis, that would not have happened, at least not then. It would have taken much longer for him to realize what he is and what he's capable of. And after that, once that all was resolved and Swamp Thing really came into his own, that was when that dynamic shifted and Swamp Thing became this guide almost. I mean, you don't get a whole lot more, Swamp Thing John interactions after Saga, but anytime you do, Swamp Thing really usually has the psychological upper hand. He's the one who he's like this Buddha figure, basically.
Yeah.
And so that's really what Swamp Thing is doing in this series. John really has to work hard to convince Swamp Thing to come back and help in what he's trying to achieve. John is not very successful at it, and it's good that he has his companions with him to help him along that way. But once he does, Swamp Thing will very much become this kind of guiding light for John.
And that was where something interesting came in. Like that was the part that really, it would have been enough. We start off, John, Nat, and Noah are on the run. John's bringing them to America in their bus, which you've got over your shoulder there.
Mm-hmm.
For anyone watching the video, we see the bus back there. So we find that he's there to find Swamp Thing to ask for help, as John usually does. And that's enough for a great story right there. But then you throw in this wrinkle. This is a part that was really, really smart. Throwing in Dream pops up and explains. So anyone who has read even just a little bit of Neil Gaiman's Sandman, you will know the story they are citing here, where Dream reveals how John kind of caused a problem. You may have lied years ago, and now you're going to have to help fix it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's all Si right there, because we knew that with the second series we had to up the ante, and we really, in order to truly bring this into the Sandman universe fold, Dream needed to make his presence known. So that was always, and Si has said this many times. We've been talking about this for years at this point. And so this seed, this entire idea was there when we were working on the first run. And I think it was even there for Si long before that, which was, John says to Swamp Thing, because John's the one who ends up with the bag of sand. He bought it at a flea market or a garage sale or something back in 1984. And in 1987, Sandman shows up, Morpheus shows up, and John tells him, I never managed to get the damn thing open, but his junkie girlfriend, Rachel, she did somehow because she's hopped up on dream sand.
Dreams. Yeah.
And I mean, it's a really tragic thing because they have, there's nothing that Morpheus can do for her. I mean, once the sand has its way, that's pretty much it. And so
she had it for so long.
And like she was really, it was starting to pervert the real world. Like the dream, the dream sands itself were starting to poison reality around her. And the only thing that, John couldn't do anything for her, and the only thing Morpheus could do for her was, gently put her out of her misery with a beautiful dream. And it's like another one of John's, cardinal sins. But John says, like I said, John says, never got the thing open, but how did she? And Si always said, well, he just lied to her, or lied to Morpheus, to him. And and Morpheus was too discombobulated from just coming out of his 75-year imprisonment that he didn't even think, care, consider questioning that.
Yeah.
So this is, and for Si, he said this is the one plot hole that he think exists in the original series, and it's always kind of, bugged him a little bit. And so now we resolve that. And then just as a, because this is all going to come, so without revealing too much, and I've said this in, at New York Comic-Con, even at the panel where it was revealed, the next big question was, how do we logically bring Sandman in? Like, why is Sandman here? Or not Sandman, sorry. How do we bring Swamp Thing in? Why is Swamp Thing here? How does this all play in? And not only that, like, how do we justify this road trip across America? And I mean, I will tell you right now, the reason why Swamp Thing is in this series, because he's a bucket list character of mine, and I just dropped those hints every time. I was like, man, it'd be really great. Like, imagine like getting Alec Holland back in there, and every time that there was something, I just dropped those breadcrumbs and I just got it into their subconscious, I guess, until finally it was just given. We have to have Swamp Thing, because it's like, if we're gonna get this back, if we're gonna get DC higher ups to greenlight this, there's got to be a big flourish. It's got to be a reason. We've got to have, not only do we have to have Dream in there, but we got to get Morpheus in. And not only do we get Morpheus in, but we got to get Swamp Thing in. So that was when I suggested, I was like, well, this is how we justify the road trip. It's how we justify Swamp Thing. It all goes right back to Saga of Swamp Thing. John had that bag of sand. He by the time he shows up, his first appearance in Swamp Thing 37, he already has that bag of sand. And what we don't see is that he's been using it, and that's he's been using it, and he's using it in Saga. And that'll get explained further as we go through the series. So
yeah, it's such a genius thing when I read to that point where Dream shows up. Like, we knew from the solicitations, the pitch of the series, that this was going to be John, it was going to be a Dream, and it was going to be Swamp Thing. We didn't know the whys, but when I got to that, that's brilliant, because that definitely could have happened. You're not changing anything from Neil's books either.
Yeah.
That absolutely he could have been lying to him, and absolutely Dream was on so much of a quest to get his tools back that he wasn't thinking about, oh, the guy told me he couldn't get it open, but he helped me locate it anyway, so I'm not.
Yeah, and it changes absolutely nothing from Alan Moore's run on Saga of Swamp Thing. It just what it does is it suggests, if not reveals, why or how John knew anything that was happening before, and how it was that he was able to lead Swamp Thing forward through that story. All related back to Crisis. So these are echoes of Crisis. Crisis on Infinite Earth, because if you recall, Crisis on Infinite Earth was happening in the main DCU. Saga of Swamp Thing started, and was building up as that was taking place. And so I don't know if it was a decree. I've never talked to Karen Berger about this, but I'd actually be really curious to find out like what was the inception. But what Alan Moore was doing was basically tying Swamp Thing in to Crisis, because the same thing that was happening with Crisis on Infinite Earth was happening with the Green. You had the Green that was having this like the Brujeria, this group of esoteric sorcerers in South America were trying to destroy the Green. And it was all tied into Crisis. And there was even that, there's some stuff that they had to do, which is, a little, I want to say silly, but when Swamp Thing went up to the Justice League's like space station in Saga, and he got to see, like, that's whenever, John told him, like, see, like, not only are you dealing with this, but the rest of the world has their own crisis to deal with. And if we don't figure this out, like now, it's all going to come crashing. It's all going to basically, poof out of existence, and we're fucked. So, so it's that's another thing that's like super fun, and it's such an honor to be able to write new stories that connect back to that like really important DC canon.
Yeah, super influential stuff that, there are still all these things coming out influenced and affected by that. And so you mentioned in the pitch there that you mentioned the name Alec Holland, which I thought was interesting, because what I was taking from issue 1, so the issue 1, we see John reconnecting with both Dream of the Endless and with Swamp Thing. But the way I was reading is that neither was it Morpheus as Dream anymore, nor Alec Holland, because since their last meeting, John's last meeting with either of them, Daniel Hall has become Dream. And are we seeing Levi Kamei from Ram V's Swamp Thing?
No. It is Alec Holland. This is Alec Holland. The entire conceit is that, Alec Holland basically gave up. That's why when we see him at the end of issue 1, he's a golf course.
Yeah.
His swamp has been bulldozed and filled in, and it's now a golf course. And if you've read, the original run of Swamp Thing, that, Alec Holland, Swamp Thing never was actually Alec Holland. It was this, Alec Holland was a scientist doing things, and when he died, his personality got imprinted onto the elemental that became Swamp Thing. And so Swamp Thing, when it was Bernie Wrightson and Lynn Wein writing it, before Alan Moore changed everything, they were one and the same. But then Alan Moore comes in and slowly reveals that he's not actually Alec Holland. That's just this personality that he's adopted, and he believes that he is Alec Holland. But as far as John is concerned, he's always Alec. And we'll always call him Alec, because it's just like that's who he knows him as.
Yeah.
And John's not the kind of person who will. John is not the kind of person who you can say, don't call me that. My nickname is this, or I want to be referred to as that. John will be like, nah, I know you as Alec.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm not going to do that. So, it's one of the things, it's another one of the flaws of John. He's a son of a bitch. He's a full narcissistic, C word. And
yeah, you can say it. We're friendly with it here, but that's often the great thing about John. Like, even John has been used in some of the sort of mainline books. Like Tom Taylor used him in Deceased recently.
Yeah,
And the reason
that, but I've been curious.
Yeah, so the reason that Tom did him so great in there was that it came to this situation where no one was able to fix this problem because, like the Supermans and everything like that, what they would do is they would ask the person for help that they knew they needed to help with this situation. And if that person wasn't willing to help, then they were fucked. But John is the guy who will fuck over each person he needs to take their help. And that's why he was the only one that could fix that situation. And that's why him being that guy is such an interesting character.
Yeah.
But back to this one, we'll not stray too far into Deceased, but if you're listening this far and you're not already having read the issue, I don't know what you were thinking, but pick it up today and check this out. It's definitely a story worth getting into.
We should probably put a little spoiler alert before that revelation.
Oh yeah,
Swamp Thing.
Yeah. We always put spoiler announcements in with the episodes when we're doing it on release day. But if you're watching on YouTube, right here on the screen right now, that's the A cover for issue 1 by Aaron himself.
That's me.
Here's the Jock cover, and this was what Sean Phillips cover, right?
Yeah, and then there's the 1:25 ratio cover from Mateus Vergara.
Yes.
It was my co-artist on the first series.
And then once you've done this, wait for, I think it's February 20th. We've got issue 2 coming.
Mm-hmm.
And you can see just from the covers, you can see how crazy things are going to get. There's a Steven Subic variant cover for issue 1. And if you're new to Aaron's art, I don't know how you would be, but if you're into Sandman stuff, you should have read James Tynan's Nightmare Country, particularly Aaron's issue here where they did some really cool flashbacks to, as I mentioned earlier, the serial, what's basically a convention of serial killers in Neil's Sandman run. And you got to recreate such an iconic scene.
Yeah.
Where Dream unmakes the Corinthian.
I loved working on those pages. I think it was just 4 pages, but man, they were monumental.
Such a cool scene. Great to see it re-represented. Before I let you wrap up and get out of here, I wanted to ask you a couple quick things.
Mm-hmm.
So in this case, we can use John as an example, but if you had the ability, like wave a magic wand or use one of John's spells, if you could completely fix one thing about the comic industry, about your job or whatever aspect of it, what's one thing that you would fix, that you would want to change? Like, okay, this needs to be like this.
Oh man, that's a big question. I don't know if there's really anything necessarily I would fix, but there is something I would prevent.
Okay, what's that?
And that is the infiltration of AI imagery.
Yeah, that's the next thing I wanted to bring up with you.
Full stop into the industry. Every convention, every publisher basically either signs a real pact or just decides this is verboten.
Yeah, really, though, it's troubling how quickly it popped up. Not just that it exists, but this attitude of the people using it that, oh, well, I'm an artist now because I put these words into a program. It's like, from my perspective, it's like calling up a pizza place, telling them what you want on your pizza and saying, I make a really great pizza.
Well, I always say it's like a patron. So your editor at a comic book publisher, or a person who is commissioning you to do a piece. They are not the artists, but they are the ones telling you what they would like to see.
Yeah.
And it's no fucking different.
Yeah.
And I call them AI word searchers. And it is, I never use the word art. It is simply AI imagery. So like those are the two terms I use, because there is no such thing as an AI artist. It is just a person who is searching. There's like I don't know if you were ever a fan of Tim and Eric.
Oh, I'm familiar.
Okay. There was an episode of Tim and Eric where they have a sketch with Paul Rudd. And it is fucking hilarious. Paul Rudd is arriving, like he doesn't play himself, he's just a guy. And he evidently, like his job, he arrives at his job, and his job is like inside this gigantic, like empty space. And there's a little pathway. It's almost like the inside of the danger room, or not the danger room in X-Men, but Cerberus or whatever that Professor X used. And so it's got this like pathway that leads out to a station, and on that station is this like shitty little work desk and a crappy old computer.
Okay.
And Paul Rudd goes out. He's got his coffee. He's got a big old mug of a thermos of coffee, and he comes in and he sits down, and he's like cracks his knuckles, and he's like, "Okay, let's get to work." And then for the next, like the entire rest of the sketch, his entire job is just him asking the computer to show him images of himself doing silly dances. And it's like, before AI was even considered at this level, like Tim and Eric had anticipated the absurdity of what AI art is, which is narcissistic individuals asking a computer to show them like grotesque images of false realities, and not only that, but in a way that steals from like true creatives. So yeah, I know, like I'm very much, like all other comic book art, like legitimate comic book artists or any legitimate artist in any genre. It's a line that shall not be crossed. There was a moment early on when, before I realized how insidious this entire thing would become, and it was like, just started to hear about what AI was, like AI imagery was. And that was the moment where I was like, there was just this like fleeting moment where I thought, this could be a really great tool for finding reference, like figuring out, like, because finding reference is like the endless like puzzle of creating art. And how you use reference, the ethics of how you use reference, whether or not you're using reference that you find through Google searches or reference that you take yourself. Like all of my figures, like I shoot reference of everything. And I thought, like, just imagine, wouldn't it be awesome? Like anytime you have like a car chase where it ends with like wreckage, like I could ask the computer, but like, can you show me a Nissan Altima that's been like smashed up? Because I need to see what that looks like. Yeah. And there was a moment where I thought, like, that would be awesome. But I'm at a point now where I'm like, I won't even entertain the notion, because now I understand the source of where how those images are cobbled together from plagiarized images. Yeah. So, what could have been an actual tool for artists has become an effort to replace.
Yeah, and I would commend you for using your one magic trick to keep that away from the industry as much as possible. I don't want to see AI imagery in comics any more than I want to read or watch stories created by, like, it's eliminating what is really the essence of art. Like, I want art, whether it's visual art, something written. You want this stuff to come from real people who have suffered, have triumphed, have had losses and victories, and have experiences, not a computer program that sucked up an artist's visual style and will spit it back out with whatever you tell it to draw.
Yeah, and art should always be the result of a struggle that the artist is engaging in. Art is not easy. It never should be easy. It's one of the reasons why my style is constantly changing. I'm constantly looking for new ways to, like, create imagery, whether that's digitally or traditionally, because I kind of work like I don't even know how to explain it. It's more like a broad mixed media where I combine digital process and traditional process in my work.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I'm constantly looking for new ways to do that. And it's always got to be difficult. The second it's easy, you've got to change and you've got to move forward. And that is exactly what AI is not. It is only about the fastest result for the smallest effort.
It's very much skipping I'm sure there are some guys doing it who have, prior some ability as an actual artist, but for most of these people jumping on it, it was a way to springboard past the point of spending years learning how to create art and just do it by typing some words.
And I despise the usage of the term democratization of art. It's not. It is the theft of culture, is what it is. It's all it is. It's about denigrating the work that real people do, and trying to steal thousands of years worth of human endeavor by small people who do not want to work for what they gain.
And something was telling about the people who gravitated toward that when artists in all areas started speaking up about their work being put into these programs, and the people utilizing it were saying, "Oh, you can't copyright your style. You can't be. Oh, it's these programs are interpreting it. You can't copyright that." But then how quickly they started to eat themselves when one of them felt that another AI guy was stepping on his list of words that he used, and they started talking about being able to copyright their lists of words. Like, whoa.
Another way to say it is it's no different than doing a Google search for a peer-reviewed scientific paper and finding it and then claiming that you wrote it because you're the one who searched for it. It's absurd. There was something I kind of had entertained this notion of trolling AI image makers if I had all the time in the world, because recently the Copyright Office of America, the United States, said that you can't copyright AI imagery because it's not created by a human.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, that's great. That means that all of these images that are made are up for grabs for anybody who wants to use them. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I'll just start claiming that these are mine, and putting them up on like these, like Redbubble or, all those little sites where you can like slap images onto like t-shirts and coffee mugs and shit like that. And just grabbing them and just like, I'll have a whole second stream of income. But of course, again, ethically, it's like, I would love to just stick it to every single one of them. But I also don't think that any money should ever be made from any of these images, no matter the reason. And anything that you do in that regard basically furthers the legitimacy of AI imagery in a broader public who may not think deeply about these issues.
Yeah. Maybe if the proceeds of such an endeavor are donated to, children who can't afford their own art supplies that
like
want
the
to learn to paint or something. Yeah.
But even then, like, I don't think that there's any justification, because it's like a altruistic outcome. It's just I can never think my way around it in a way where I find an ethical outcome for it. So it's just like fun little like just stuff that can exist inside my mind. But I just what I've come to for me, I know there's a lot of people in social media who really go after AI imagery, and I just decided I'm just not going to engage at all and ignore it. And so far, even though like every time you look at a post that has anything to do with it, there's always those people who are defending it, and it's the same rhetoric over and over again. It's very tired rhetoric. It's still we've been here for a year. We're kind of at a stage now where I think that AI is really not going to, like, the way that AI creates images, it's not really going to get any better. It's all become this homogenous looking, like ultra polished shit, that's overcomplicated shit. And like, AI is starting to figure out how to like make a hand look like a hand.
Get the right number of fingers.
Yeah, it doesn't matter how, but the thing is it doesn't matter, because every image always has something in it that just doesn't make any fucking sense. And it's absurd. And it's just not getting any better at this point. And it just all looks the same now. It's just, an algorithm, a computer program is all focusing its mathematics towards a commonality. And that commonality is uninteresting, because what makes art interesting is its diversity, is its unique voice that comes with every image created by any person. And it doesn't matter, like for me, my biggest influences are people like Bill Sienkiewicz and Sean Phillips and Kent Williams, John J. Muth, all of the great Vertigo artists from the 90s, John Paul Leon. Like, you can see the experimentation. Like, whenever you see experimentation in my work, like that influence comes from Dave McKean and Bill Sienkiewicz and the like. When you see realism, that's coming from Sean Phillips and John Paul Leon and the like. So, but the thing is it will never look like their work, because it's been filtered through my experience, my idiosyncratic, ways of making marks that are unique to my physiology. AI is an algorithm that cobbles images together. doesn't understand influence. It doesn't understand interpretation. All it understands is amalgamation. Like, how do I take these different images and amalgamate them into something? And so it can't actually think, process information. And this is what I find so absurd about people who say they're AI artists. Like, it doesn't fucking matter what words you ask a computer to search for you. The algorithm is interpreting that for you. It's not you.
Yeah. And there's a reason that none of this stuff can be copyrighted, whether it's visual art or writing. It's the same thing with companies aren't going to start producing movies and shows, at least not at this point, based on AI scripts, because none of that stuff can be copywritten. There's a podcast that I listened to from Craig Mazin, screenwriter and genius. And when everyone was worried about, aren't they going to start replacing your job with AI stuff? And he's like, no, that's not going to be a problem. No, not going to. I'm not worried. No, I'm not worried. And then he revealed why. Well, they can't. He started talking about how, like, HBO and Disney and stuff, they're as worried about this technology as anyone else is, because their concern now becomes, well, what if someone gives us something? What if we're given a script that we don't know was, someone used AI on it, and then we get into a copyright problem later.
Yeah, that's the insidious thing, because when it comes to the written word, it's probably much more difficult to identify. There's a lot of shitty writers out there, and all AI written content is garbage. So it could probably become very difficult to discern if a screenplay has been written by just a bad screenwriter or a computer program. Yeah. And unfortunately, if anything, like, this would be my other wish, that what AI actually does, especially for the written word, is elevate what makes it through. Because, remember, like, a few years ago, it was like the golden era of television and streaming. Like, everything that Netflix put out was fucking gold. Like, everything everybody was doing was just gold. It was all like, you got it. Like, every time a new series came out, it was like, you have to watch it. It's the next best thing. And then eventually that passed, and now we're kind of back into this era now where it's like, who knows? Like, it's a crapshoot whether or not anything's going to be good or not. And there's a lot of shit out there. And this is a good, I'll give you a little behind the scenes about Infidel. It's an anecdote that Pornsack told me. So without naming names, you can obviously go look it up probably to find out who was hired to write the first screenplay for the Infidel film. And of course, and this is all, Pornsack and I have gotten the rights back. It all reverted. Pandemic, fucked that all up. Well, pandemic, and also shows like Bridgerton. It's kind of like post-racial TV landscape where production companies started to get skittish about doing work that really hits hard with topics. So everybody wanted like these kind of kumbaya sessions, which is very much what Bridgerton is about like ignoring that racism is a thing. But anyway, this was before that, obviously. Pornsack, he said that he was at a party or something in LA and ran into a friend of his who had run into one of the screenwriters, and he said that he had talked to him about it and was like, "Oh, you're the ones writing. You and your partner are the ones writing the screen adaptation for Infidel." He's like, "I'm good friends with Pornsack. It's an amazing series," and started talking to him about it. He's like, "What do you think about it?" And the screenwriter told him, "Well, I don't know. I only read the first issue."
Jesus. That sounds about right, doesn't it?
Well, that answers everything. I mean, that answers the entire fucking thing. And it's one of those things where, like, art is one thing, but I have to tell you, there is a compelling argument to be made by cynics who would say, who fucking cares? Nobody seems to give a shit anyway. So, if anything, what I hope is that the rise of AI, especially in the writing side of things, makes people start to fucking care again about what it is that they're putting on paper. People need to start thinking more deeply about the culture they create and what culture is worth creating and how much you give to that. And you should give your all. I mean, if you're making the kind of money that screenwriters in Hollywood make nowadays, they should fucking care deeply about what it is they're writing. So I don't know. The older I get, the more cynical I become about, the future of everything. But
well, you kind of have to. It's to an extent, it's adapting to the changing world.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I would. I've always felt this way, that I would much rather, whether it's a comic, a novel, a movie, a show, I would much rather take in any of that media that is created by someone who created that thing because it was what they wanted to create, like they were fighting to be able to make that thing, rather than someone who created that thing because, oh, they offered me this job, so I took it.
I mean, and I will say that, as cynical as I am, I will always take a narcissistic piece of shit that was crapped out by someone who didn't who didn't care about what they were doing. As long as it came from the mind of a human being, I will take that every goddamn day of the week over anything written by an algorithm. Like, I do not care. Like, anything. Like, let there be shit. As long as that shit has been created by us and not a replacement that is, that exists. Like I'm a big fan of H.P. Lovecraft and his stories. There's this one story of his is called The Mound, I think it was. And it outlines this society that lives, I think, beneath the world, and this society has become utterly complacent because everything's been taken care of for them. And so all they have to do all day is just like lie around and, nothing. It's a lot like it's a common storyline in Star Trek. Like the original series, they were constantly running into these societies where a computer had taken over and over all of the functions for society, and then the rest of the population itself was collapsing because they didn't know how to fix things. They didn't know how to do anything, and it's like, well, this is what people don't realize is, I mean, when you start to allow programs, algorithms, computers to take over what is quintessentially human, which is the creative spark, that's when we really have to worry. It's one thing, all through the 80s and the 90s, people worried about robots taking your jobs. And those were physical robots doing manual labor, building cars, whatever, in factories. And it's that's one thing. But, what we've learned is that there was always something else that someone could do. I mean, it's a complex subject, and obviously, labor is not what it was, 20 years ago, but it didn't undermine the human spirit in general. There was always that thing that we could hold on to And I remember for so long, that was the refrain. As the rise of the robots came, for labor, well, at least we can all rest assured that there are certain things that robots will never be able to do. And amongst those is create art. And now they're trying to do that. And they're trying to tell us that they're creating art. But it's time for new education about what art is, about how we engage with art, what it means, all of that.
Yeah, and stop eliminating the learning process and all of the pain that goes into it. Enough of the, I want to be able to create a piece of art and I want to be able to create it today.
Yeah.
It has been my dearest wish for 5 minutes, and now I want to be able to do it.
Yeah. Well, and again, it's that Paul Rudd. It's like everybody wants to be this king who can say, I demand to see this. Jester, do this for me. I now want to see this. I want to see a monkey kissing an elephant, dancing a jig on the moon. Show me it.
I just had to go and look up an image. I assume that this.
That's it. That's absolutely it.
I'm gonna have to go watch this after. And just that it's Paul Rudd had me sold.
Yeah. It's like people just wanting to play God, I guess, and like, show me this, show me these images, show me this thing. And it's funny because Photoshop has been trying to incorporate this shit into its program, and it is just the worst. I played around with it just for shits and giggles to see what it actually does. And it's absurd. It's absolutely absurd. It totally fucks up your images and the stuff that it generates. Like, the idea is that you have an image, like say you have a photograph of a coastline. You're like, I would like to see a lighthouse on that bluff. And then it's supposed to like be able to put that into the image.
Yeah.
And so I played with it just to see like, well, if I can use this for like reference purposes, like I was saying earlier. And the shit that it comes up with, like, nothing looks like anything. Like there was a scene in issue 1 of there's the cop that shows up in issue 1 of Hellblazer. And I was like, oh, I wonder if I could like get some reference, because I have the reference of her, in a costume that I cobbled together. But I was like, it'd kind of be nice to be able to put a police belt around her, and I have reference of that now. And so I played around with it, and the shit that it cobbled onto her waist was the most absurd bullshit. Like, it was like, what is that? And I was like, delete, don't use this. This is dumb. Like, just stop.
At least you can say you gave it its fair shot and found that it was crap.
Well, and then again, even as I was doing it, I come back to that ethical question of like, this just isn't something that I should be engaging in. I should not be. And another reason why I backed up, I was like, I want to see what this is capable of. But even then, I realized like this is not something to be muddled with. It's a Pandora's box, and people are opening it incrementally. And unlike a true Pandora's box, I think it's just like NFTs. There was that moment where everybody thought like, oh fuck, like what's happening? And the entire thing collapsed. Everybody thought it was the next great thing. And I just have a feeling that ultimately AI, it's not going away, and it's going to exist in very specific forms. But I think the way that people are trying to force it upon society is not going to be the way that it ultimately exists.
And you can often tell from the way a new thing like NFTs were being kind of thrown at you. Like, we were getting emails daily from these different NFT companies like, oh, do you want to partner on this thing, make this or be a sponsor of this NFT? And I laughed heartily when I saw that article, sometime late last year, that the headline was just something like the vast majority of NFTs are now worthless. Well, big surprise.
Yeah, there's it pops up on my Instagram feed every once in a while, but there's a guy who lampoons this stuff, and he does an Antiques Roadshow version of NFTs, and and he plays both characters, like he's the guy in the Poindexter suit, and then the other guy who shows up who's like a tech bro dude, and then he shows off an actual NFT. And then talks about and asks him well, how much did you spend on this? It's like, well, me and my friends got together and we heard about this is going to be the next big thing. So, we dropped $500,000 on it. And then he'll tell you, well, this was actually created by a pioneering NFT artist named Fart Knuckle. And because they always have these fucking ridiculous, just stupid ass names. And he's like, and he was actually really popular for a while. Was considered a pioneer. This is his Abraham Lincoln series of monkeys. This one's actually called Abraham Lincoln, and you'll be. I think you're going to be happy to know what it's worth. And it's like, yeah. This one's actually worth 2 cents. Yeah. And it's like what they're all worth. They're worth nothing. They're worth absolutely nothing.
As they should be.
Yeah.
It's
because it's
an
really
image
just
on your phone.
Laundering money, which failed as a way of laundering money, because the people who actually need, the criminals trying to launder money, unloaded all of that. And then those ended up in the portfolio of some dipshit who doesn't understand the world of criminality.
Oh man.
Yeah. So, but oh man, how we've diverged.
Yeah, that was fun though. But yeah, we kept you way longer here than we had originally discussed. But back on topic.
I was just waiting for the wife to call. She had to work today, so
okay.
I wanted to make sure that I was done before she got home. But so yeah, I've been good. It's been fun.
Yes.
It's been a while since I always like doing this. It's fun talking, getting out of my my hibernation, my hermitage.
Well, we appreciate and happy to give you the avenue to do it. But Hellblazer, Dead in America issue 1, as of the time you're hearing this, it is in stores right now. And February 20th, issue 2, you see right here. I did get to read issue 1 beginning of December, and it was even more than I thought it would be. So definitely go check it out if you haven't already. Even though we've already spoiled it for you, you're still going to want to read it and the rest of the series. Now, one thing in the solicitations from the distributor, at issue 2, it's listed as an 8 issue. At issue 3, it's listed as a 9 issue. Is 9 the now?
Yeah, that was a thing. It's one of those little sneaky things we do to give ourselves a little bit more time. So issue 5 is a special issue. It's not a fill-in issue. It is going to be a little guest issue. And that's where there's going to be three little stories, because there's an area of America that we have to, so basically New Mexico, where I'm from, we have to jump over it, and we go basically from Texas to where we are trying to get to after Texas. But we really wanted to tell some stories in between there, and especially a couple stories in New Mexico. And so we've got this issue. Si is writing 2 of those. I'm writing 1. This is my true solo writing debut. I did co-write West of Sundown with Tim Seeley. like Tim did the lion's share of that. I was more a plot guy and an editing guy on that series. But this one is all me, and but it's going to be 3 different artists drawing these 3 different stories with some bookends by myself. So.
Nice.
So that we're doing that, and then so there's no interruption, follows the same storyline, and just keeps going. So it was a pleasant surprise that we got to add 1 more issue to the series.
So we get to see Constantine roll through New Mexico and maybe bump into Heisenberg or something. I'll assume that's what it's going to be.
He definitely goes through Albuquerque, and he's driving down the same road that, if you recall the episode where Walter White is going to the hospital for one of his cancer treatments, and he talks about like driving down Central, and he gets that green. He was like, "I got that green light, every green light, and I just wanted 1 red light so I could have just a few more moments, before I got there." That's the same road that John and the crew will be driving down. Though I don't make any Breaking Bad. I don't make any Breaking Bad references.
It's probably for the best.
Yeah.
Well, I can't wait to see that one, but I also can't wait for issue 2. February 20th is issue 2. John Constantine Hellblazer, or John Constantine Hellblazer, Dead in America, issue 1 out now, issue 2 February 20th. Anything else you want to say, Aaron?
Just thanks for having me, and get to come shop and buy as many copies. Give them to your grandma and your niece and your baby and yourself, and keep a few, for just future purposes, whatever.
Grandmothers love John, is what I've always heard. But thank you, Aaron. Thank you, everyone, for listening. That was Aaron Campbell. This was Bat Force Radio. Have a good night.